I'm Chantel Sater, the Deputy Director at the Board of Elections.
And for today's Facebook Live, we want to talk about polling locations for the upcoming November 3rd general election. And we are talking about that today, even though we're a little ways off from Election Day, because we're going to talk about it today because we just recently locked in our locations for this upcoming November election. And with that, that means some voters are going to be moving around. So we want to give people a heads up and kind of inform them on some of the things that they can do to know where they're going to vote and how they can find that out. So we had for the spring primary, we were on target to have 298 polling locations for that election. We now, for the November 3rd general election, are going to have 295. So we have reduced our polling locations by 3. Our goal was to stay in the vicinity of where we were before, and I think that we did meet that goal of trying to have polling locations for the voters that are located close to them within their communities. While the number of polling locations has changed, and we're down from 298 down to 295, it impacts a lot more people because there is a shuffling of precincts that move around for that. So just to give you the big numbers, basically we adjusted polling locations in 20 municipalities. We have 59 in Cuyahoga County, so 20 of those municipalities will have at least one poll place change. In those 20 municipalities, it impacts 89 precincts, and those 89 precincts are made up of 83,567 voters. So there's 83,567 voters that we know that will have a different location from where they were scheduled for the spring. A lot of individuals, but it is unfortunately from election to election, we've been seeing numbers similar to that of individuals being moved. We do like to keep polling locations as consistent as possible, but there's things that force our hand, and so we have to take those into consideration. One of the big things for this upcoming election is social distancing, and we are committed here at Cuyahoga County to setting up polling locations in a socially distant manner. What that means is when you stand in line to vote, you'll be 6 feet apart. The equipment, the check-in stations, the voting booths, the scanners in which you cast your ballot, all 6 feet apart. So by doing that, you spread out the footprint of the polling location, which means that in some instances we had to take a precinct out of a location and move it somewhere else. So you could have a decent number, a fair number of people voting in that location without overcrowding. Another thing that we had to take into consideration is that the Secretary of State told everyone in Ohio, all 88 counties, do not set up polling locations inside of senior residential facilities. And so we did have quite a few of those in Cuyahoga County. We started to make those changes in the spring, and we finalized that here now for the fall. So taking those two things into consideration, that is the main reason why we do have changes and why we have those 89 precincts that are going to change. So I give you those numbers, and now your natural question is, well, how do I know? How do I know if I'm impacted? And Chantel is going to tell you some of the ways in which we will educate voters and what you can do yourself to find out that information.
So the easiest way that you can determine whether or not your polling location has changed is by going to our website and looking at the tool on the left-hand side of the homepage, which is where do I vote? And if you simply type in your address, it will give the polling location that is assigned to that precinct. But we also have sent a letter to all 83,000 voters explaining that the polling location has changed and the reasons why. So those letters went to the post office yesterday and should be hitting your mailboxes in the next couple of days. So that will come on as a letter, like I said, in a normal Board of Elections envelope. So it's not gonna be a postcard, that looks like another campaign piece. The other thing that you'll be getting in the next couple of weeks is a voter information guide, and that talks a lot about your options that you have available for voting, but one of the main pieces of information on that voter information guide is your election day polling location. For those voters who have a polling location change from from March or the spring, I guess, March, April, we never decided exactly what we should call that election. Let's just call it the spring election. There will be a notification at the top of that polling location name and address that says, notice this polling location has changed. So so the voters who have a change, they're going to get a letter and then also a special notification on the voter information guide. And there's one more tool on our website that is available now, and that is our interactive maps. So on the bottom right-hand side of our homepage is an interactive map section, and that shows all the polling locations in Cuyahoga County. And you can actually search your address, and it will show you a live map of that area and which polling location is assigned to your address as well. And it will also give you your district information, so your precinct and ward, and also state and house districts.
There's one particular polling location that I want to bring up and talk about, and that is the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, which is going to be a polling location on election day. And we get a lot of questions about this, and there's some confusion, so we want to set the record straight. So the field house is a polling location. However, it is only for voters who reside in Cleveland Ward 3, precincts I, L, and Q. So it's not open for the entirety of the county to go to. It's not open for, say, all Cleveland residents. It is specifically for those Ward 3 voters who live in precincts I, L, and Q. That is kind of the heart of downtown where those precincts exist. But look for your mailboxes, because the things that Chantel said, you will get those notifications. And the council person for that area is Councilman Kerry McCormick. And I know in discussions with him, he also will be pushing out information to the voters downtown who live in those precincts to let them know. We don't want confusion on election day. We want you going to the correct location. So please don't visit the field house on election day for voting. And it's important that you get to the correct polling location, because that is where you are supposed to cast your ballot. And we talked about a lot of these changes that we made for this election had to do with social distancing. And Chantel is going to tell you a little bit about what will election day look like at the polls in a socially distant environment.
So one thing that we want voters to anticipate on election day is actually seeing a line of voters waiting to check in. And we just want to reassure you that that doesn't necessarily mean that there's an issue. It actually has to do with the fact that we have to keep voters 6 feet apart. So in some of our locations, we just did not have the space to be able to queue the voters inside the polling location. So some of those lines will actually start at the very entrance of the location in order to have enough room for all the voting booths and scanners that are there. There will be a new positions election. It's a sanitation official, so we will be providing all the polling locations with a few different types of PPE items to clean all of the voting booths and scanners and electronic poll books after you check in. We're also asking voters to just take the pen that you're voting with that we provide you when you're checking in to mark your ballot. Just take it with you, or we'll have a recycle bin for all of those pens. So we're going to actually not reuse pens from voter to voter. And the other thing I would just like to mention is that just like all of the other facilities in the state of Ohio, masks will be, we will be asking all voters to make sure that they bring their masks with them. We will have a few at each polling location in the event that voters forget their masks. We still want everyone to have the opportunity to vote.
All right. See, did we get any questions in today? No questions? Okay. So I guess one last thing that I just want to say is, you hear it here from the Board of Elections, you may hear it from other advocacy groups or individuals talking about elections, and that's having your election plan, your plan for voting and what you want to do. And if you intend to go to the polls and vote on election day, part of that plan is you do need to check what your polling location is, especially if a lot of times what we see in the presidential year is individuals who only come out once every 4 years to vote. And there's been a lot of movement in the last 4 years of polling locations. So you want to make sure that you know exactly where you're supposed to go. But if you are a regular voter, never miss an election, potentially your location will be changed too. So take a few minutes to research that so you end up going to the correct location. Other than that, I don't think much else on that. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.